They tell an old story about this fellow who came home from work. This is pre-coronavirus days. And he comes home, parks the car, gets out, comes to the porch and sees the door is wide open. And immediately his heart informs him that there is absolute chaos and this is not a usual evening. Indeed, his instinct is authentic. It's true. He walks into the house and it's what you would call in Yiddish a churban. Absolute pandemonium, chaos, desolateness, destruction, confusion. First of all, there is ice cream all over the couch and strewn all over the dining room table and the living room, bookcases and expensive pieces of furniture. All of his young children are in pajamas. This is 7 o'clock in the evening. They're in pajamas running around. The house is not just filthy. It seems like the house was hit by a tornado. There's food everywhere. There's filth everywhere. The younger ones, the younger babies who need to be tended to, nobody tended to them, so they are all in, you'll excuse me, in very dirty diapers. The stench, the smell, the odor in the house is horrible. Wherever he looks, tables are turned over, the milk and the orange juice is spilled all over the place. He can't believe what he's seeing. He runs upstairs, goes into the bedroom, he's looking for his wife. His wife is in her bed. She's still dressed in her nightgown from last night, very, very relaxed. She's reading a novel under her blanket, on the pillow, serene, calm, cool, collective, reading a novel, no worry in the world. He runs in and he says, I don't understand you. Do you know what is going on downstairs? There's absolute chaos and destruction. This house is going to be destroyed. These kids, nobody's taking care of them. Nobody is helping them. It's crazy. What happened? What's going on? She smiles at her husband, and in a very serene tone, she says, you know how you often come home and we talk at night and you turn to me and you say, what do you do all day? Why are you stressed? Like, why do you always feel there's not enough time? I mean, I go to work, I pay the bills, I cover the debt, I make ends meet. You're basically a stay-home mom without much duties or responsibility or a stressful lifestyle. What do you do all day? What do you do? Like, what do you do? That's what you ask me, she tells her husband. Well, let me share something with you. Whatever I do each day, today I didn't do it. And of course, this anecdote teaches us how sometimes we see certain things happening and we take them for granted. You come home, the kids are being taken care of, there's food in the refrigerator, the couch is tidy and organized, the home looks like a civilized place. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. Somebody had to work hard to maintain the home. We don't always appreciate it until we don't have it. And very often, spouses don't appreciate the tremendous work and concentration and effort that goes into this by the other spouse, whether it may be the wife or the husband. I know in today's day and age, so often before Corona, both are working. So it's sometimes a joint effort, sometimes more one, more the other. But it's important not to take it for granted. I share this through this anecdote, which I appreciate, also because of what happened in the last few months in our world. And let me phrase it this way. You know, it's hard now to imagine this conversation that I'm going to describe, but I want to describe this conversation to you, okay? If a few months ago, maybe after Hanukkah, or even a week before Purim, January, February, beginning of March, I would have told you, you know, within a few weeks, every industry, not in South Africa and in the world, will be transformed. Every single school will close down. Every single shul will close down. Every service will be canceled. Every game, every theater, every club, every bar, every restaurant, every cafe, courthouses, places that are central to communal life, public parks, public malls, great shopping centers, everything will be closed down. Every child who's overseas will come home and remain home for months. You would look at me, remember, you would look at me and you would say, Rabbi, why? You are insane. This is impossible. Maybe, if God forbid, there'll be some nuclear war, heaven forbid, or some massive terrorism, which is beyond imagination. And even if then, the whole world, can't happen. Well, there's going to be a third world war like the one in 1939? Come on. You got to be crazy to think of that. Look what happened, my friends. Mi milel umi pilel in the biblical words. Who can imagine this? Who can even do such a thing? And how? Not a bullet was shot. A virus, the size of 125 nanometers. A coronavirus invisible to the naked eye. You need microscopic instruments to be able to even know that it exists. A virus the size of corona, invisible, brought 7.7 billion people to their knees and changed the entire world as we know it. Every one of us has now been in quarantine for more than 2 months. Everything I described before, which a few months ago we would have deemed impossible, happened, and without a bullet shot, without an international conflict, without terrorism, from a tiny little virus in 2019, 2020, we call it COVID-19 because it started in 2019, even though it hit our shores in 2020, but we call it COVID-19. The coronavirus of 2019 has done just this. Simultaneously, the lights went out everywhere in the world, almost simultaneously. A week earlier here, a week later there, and those who did it earlier were better off. But the lights shut. And through what? Not through any massive thing that anybody would be able to see with their eyes. Thousands of years ago, we didn't know it exists. I come back to the joke. Remember what the lady said? You asked me what I do every day. Well, today I didn't do it. We look at life and we take it for granted. We wake up in the morning. Of course the sun has risen. What should the sun do? Not rise. Sun sets, evening comes. Of course, what should the sun do? It shouldn't set. We take it for granted. I take for granted that there are 75 trillion cells in my body. Everybody knows exactly what to do based on the instructions of the DNA within the nucleus of each cell. Billions of genetic code in one cell with exact instructions. I take it for granted. I take for granted such a perfect, seamless way where the ecosystem is so balanced that it allows life to continue on our planet as we know it. I take for granted that the cosmos exists. Of course. But sometimes the woman of the house tells the husband, you know what you asked me to do every day? You asked me what I do every day. Today I didn't do it. One little tiny virus that begins in Wuhan, China, closes down the planet, closes down the world. What a sobering thought. What an arousing thought. What an important awareness in life. What does this tell us about ourselves? What does this tell us about life? What does it tell us about our planet? It makes us stop and rethink everything. It allows us to retreat back to our core and indeed restart on our life. We were given a gift. Amidst the tragedies, amidst the pain, amidst the uncertainty, amidst the sadness and the suffering of many, amidst the economic challenges and the future we face together, we have also been given a tremendous gift. And it's the gift of inner reflection and transformation. It's the gift to be able to press restart on our lives. It's the gift to be able to emerge from this wiser, smarter, deeper, metamorphosized, and transformed. There is an expression in davening in our prayers. V'chol hachayim yoiducha sela. All the living ones will thank you for eternity. We don't take a living organism for granted. And the famous halachic authorities tell us that the words chayim, ches yud yud mem, which is the Hebrew term for life, is an acronym of 4 words: Choyle, Yam, Yisurim, and Midbar. The Torah, Jewish law, teaches us that there are 4 people who go through a crisis, and if they emerge unscathed, or scathed, but then they heal, they come back to themselves, they have a special duty to express special gratitude. The times of the temple, they would bring a special offering called a carbon taida, a gratitude offering, which included a sacrifice and offering, a lot of bread, which they fed to all of the citizens in Jerusalem, whoever can eat. This was a special gratifying offering of gratitude. Today, we have the blessing of Hagomel, and this is usually 4 situations. 4 situations: somebody who was ill, a serious illness, and they recovered. Chayla. Somebody who traveled through the sea, they took a voyage through the sea, which certainly in ancient times was extremely dangerous, and they emerge, they come out, they have to make the special blessing. The same is true. Yisurim, somebody who was imprisoned, and they're emancipated, and at last somebody who traveled through the midbar, the wilderness. That's the meaning of V'chol hachayim yoiducha sela. All those who went through chayim, the chayla, the one who was ill and came out. Yam went through the sea. Yisurim experienced the pain of confinement, the agony of incarceration, and finally midbar, the last mem, they traveled through the wilderness and the desert, which was dangerous. Still dangerous. And they emerged, they make a special offering and blessing of gratitude. But the obvious question is, why are you calling them chayim? Why are you calling them the ones who are alive? They are the ones whose lives were challenged. They are the ones who almost lost their lives. They are the ones whose life was almost snatched away from them. They're the ones who experienced the vulnerability as they faced death. Why are you calling them the living ones? They were at the verge. They stood at the portal of death. Thank God they were saved. You call them the chayim, the living ones. And one of the profound answers to this is that sometimes it's that crisis that removes all of the regular crutches that we hold on to, that allows me and allows you to actually start living life to the fullest. There's a very famous prayer that we say when we ask for rain and we ask for dew twice a year, Pesach, Shmini Atzeres, we say it should be l'chayim v'loy lamavis, for life and not for death. L'chayim v'loy lamavis. Now the halachic commentators say that you, in Hebrew, you say zachrenu l'chayim, not zachrenu lachayim. Zachrenu, remember us, l'chayim, zachrenu l'chayim, not lachayim, because lachayim could sound like Loi chayim, remember us for the absence of life. So we say lichayim, not with a patach, not lachayim, but lichayim, with a tzeir, which means remember us to life. They say lichayim v'loi la mavis. And they ask a very obvious question. If so, why do we say lichayim v'loi la mavis? We should say lichayim v'loi limavis. Because when you say lichayim v'loi la mavis, it sounds like lichayim v'loi la mavis, for life and not for the absence of death. 2 negatives is a positive. When you say, I don't want to have not death, it means I want death. So we should say l'chaim v'lo limavus. By l'chaim we say l'chaim, not lachaim, because it sounds like the absence of life. But then we say lamavus, which sounds like v'lo lamavus, and not the absence of life. Two negatives is a positive, and one of the answers that's given is that is what we're asking for. Remember us, l'chaim v'lo lamavus. Allow me to live. Don't only allow me to live a life that is defined by the fact that I didn't die. There are two types of lives. There are lives where we're just part of a routine. We're in a rut. And yeah, I happen to be alive because I'm not dead. That's not life. L'chaim v'loy lamavus. I don't only want a life which is defined by the absence of death. I want a life that is defined by vision. A life in which I suck the marrow out of my life every single moment. A life in which I can say, carpe diem, I seize the day, I seize the moment. And sometimes it takes a crisis to remind me who I am, what my life is about, what my priorities are, what makes up my inner core. It allows me to shed all the facades, all the masks, all the external layers that are unnecessary. At best, they are superfluous, and at worst, they obstruct the true flow of my energy. They obstruct my productivity, and they obstruct my inner fulfillment and me fulfilling the mission that God entrusted my soul when He sent it down to our planet. Sometimes the people who went through those journeys, they never look at life the same way. They know what really matters and what doesn't matter. They know what to sweat and what not to sweat. They appreciate what a moment of life means. They don't only live from one distraction to another distraction. They actually were given the gift of having the ability to identify what is truly valuable, what is timeless, what do you really want to hold on to, and what are just distractions. Maybe nice distractions, but that's not what life is all about. And I feel that all of us have been on such a journey. I have spoken to some friends who emerged literally from the portal of death. I have a close friend who I grew up with. He was in a hospital in Miami together with 49 other COVID patients. Each one passed away besides him. He's a transformed person, a different person. But each of us in our own way. What was life before this? Well, look at your schedule. Everybody was traveling. There was never a time in history that travel was so easy and geschmack and fun. I know my own schedule with traveling. People woke up, they went to work, of course. The entertainment industry, you go shopping, you go out here, you go out there, you go more shopping. From the gym, you went to the therapist, to Pilates, to more shopping, to a game, to a bar, to a club, to a movie, to a concert. Every person according to their own lifestyle and according to their priorities and according to their time and according to their agendas. You came home and you went out again. Talk about the youth, the dating scene. The dating scene was extremely active. In fact, if you don't have a date one night, you feel like a loser. And suddenly everything stopped. Everything stopped. I know in my life, I travel a lot. In my vocation, I travel a lot. It's the first time. Many, many years, decades. Home every single Shabbos. Not just every Shabbos, every single day. I walk around my block a little bit. Walk around our neighborhood a little bit, of course, with the proper social distancing. We were all given a gift. And what's this gift? The gift is to be able to start asking that important question. What is real life? What does it mean to be alive? What does a day in which I'm truly alive look like? Ooh, that's a gift. If you can answer that question genuinely, and you can take that with you out of this pandemic, that will be an amazing and incredible achievement. There's a beautiful interpretation. There's a famous work called Noam Elimelech. It's an old Hasidic work by the Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk. And his son quotes there an incredible, beautiful insight. Every day we speak of the miracle of the parting of the sea. It comes from the book of Exodus, Beshalach. And the language that's used by the Hebrew Bible, by the Torah, is the children of Israel entered into the sea, into dry land, because the sea parted, and the terrain of the sea became dry land as the water parted. At the end of the story, the Torah changes the order of the words. It says, Vayavoyu b'nei Yisrael bayabosha b'toich. The Jewish people went into dry land in the sea. Why the change? And every morning we say this. Uvnei Yisrael holchu bayabosha b'toich. And he says something very powerful and so relevant today. He says, they're standing there in front of the sea and the sea parts. Wow. This was an incredible moment in history. The sea parted and they walk through the sea. It becomes dry land and the Jewish people are saved from their enemy. The Egyptians drown, the sea water comes back, drowns the Egyptians, and the Jews come out. But you know what? Tomorrow, the sea is not going to split. Seas don't part every day. There are those moments in history when the veils of nature are removed, but that doesn't happen every day. We live in a world of nature. We live in a world where there's a big difference between dry land and sea. If you want to survive in the sea, you go into a boat. Dry land, you can walk, you're fine. We can't live underwater. So what was the purpose of this miracle? The purpose of this miracle was that after they come out, Vayavoyu b'nei Yisrael bayabosha, even when a Jew wakes up in the morning and gets out of bed and he places his 2 feet on dry land, he or she should be able to experience that as a miracle of splitting the sea. Because really, is the miracle of walking on dry land any less than splitting the sea? Is the miracle of trillions of cells allowing my 2 legs to walk on dry land any less than the miracle of splitting the sea? Is the miracle of the fact that there is dry land, l'roika haaretz al hamayim, we thank God every single morning that the water, that the water doesn't flood the planet, that delicate balance between water on dry land, my ability to be able to walk, my ability to be able to walk on the earth on dry land and to be able to see a tree growing and a bird chirping. What has to happen for all this to work and work in such an extraordinary, efficient way? And one day, when my wife says, oh, today I didn't do it, it's over. That vision that they had when the sea split, the purpose was not to inspire them at that moment. The purpose was to inspire them subsequently. When they come into dry land, they should see it as the same miracle of splitting the sea. And in many ways, I find this insight so relevant because the sea has parted. And what do I mean the sea has parted? The water covers the sea. We don't see what is inside, but sometimes we get to see a little bit of a deeper layer of ourselves. And I think each and every one of us was blessed with this gift of inner reflection, of inner introspection. We were given the ability to revisit our marriages, to revisit our relationships with our children, to revisit our relationships with our parents, with our siblings, with our family members, with our friends, with our communities, to revisit our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with God. Every one of us was challenged to revisit these relationships. And I know the answer for all of us is not always rosy. If you have a great marriage, this is a great opportunity. It probably enhanced your marriage. If you're in a difficult marriage, the difficulties emerged more. If you have a great relationship with your children, the relationship blossomed at this time. If you have a difficult relationship with the children, everything that is buried beneath the surface came out. But the sea parted, and that's a gift, because when you can expose an infection, when you can expose the skeletons, when you can shine light on your demons, there is clarity. And clarity is always a gift, even when the clarity is of a painful nature. Yes, the sea parted to some degree for all of us. We were given vision into deeper dimensions of our life that we could have not had life continued as usual. It could only happen because everything outside shut down. And now when nighttime comes, I'm sitting on the couch with my own family members. I'm not running to a class here, a lecture here, a flight here, a seminar here, a retreat here. I'm not running to the airport. I'm home. Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all of us. Some of us are very busy at home. Some of us are maybe bored at home. But everybody has to face themselves in a way that they have not faced themselves before. Now I know we have plenty of distractions. We have the telephone, we have WhatsApp, we have websites, we have plenty of distractions. So if you try really, really, really hard, you could have used this time for no self-reflection. But most of us, even with all of the technology, we're compelled to split our sea and to take a sobering look at who I am, what my marriage looks like, what my relationship with my children looks like. What does it mean to sit with myself? What does it mean to daven myself? No shul, no sermon, no community kiddush, no socializing in the foyer or the hallway or sometimes in the sanctuary, no parties, no shopping. What does it look like to be with myself and God? Wow. That's called splitting of the sea. But you know what? The sea is going to come back. The sea doesn't remain split forever. We're going to emerge. God willing, we're going to get out of this crisis and life will go back to normal. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of for myself. I don't want life to go back to normal. Of course, I want the blessings that we should be able to go back to school and go back to work, and communities should be able to reunite, and South Africa should be able to have its Sunday afternoon barbecues and braais, and all of us should be able to enjoy our lives in the best and healthiest way. Of course we want that. But I am also afraid that we just go back to normal and in a few weeks we forget everything because we take everything for granted. That must not happen. We cannot allow that to happen because such an historic opportunity doesn't come often. Thank God it doesn't come often. We don't ask for this. When it comes, worse than the virus itself is squandering the lessons, squandering the opportunity to click restart on my life, squandering the calling, the summons for me to really start over again and start over from a much deeper and more powerful place. You know, my dearest friends, what does this mean practically? What does all of this mean practically? I think a few things, and this is where I want to summarize and conclude my remarks. Number one, what does it mean to click restart on my life? I think each of us can speak about themselves. I have to speak about myself. You can speak about yourself. But there are some truths that relate to all of us. Number one, it means that so many of us have discovered now what life looks like when we spend long days and long nights and long weeks and long months with our spouse and with our children. I know not everybody goes into this category. Some are senior citizens and they're completely alone. My mother has been alone for a few months in her home. May she be well and blessed and healthy. But many of us have discovered what life looks like in that tight-knit family bond and unit, domesticated, isolated, quarantined. And many of us have discovered the beauty of it, the amazing beauty of it. In many ways, it was like a throwback of what life used to be in the shtetl hundreds of years ago. People didn't travel, or if you traveled, it came with tremendous risk and headaches and stress. There were people who remained in the same shtetl their entire lifetime, seeing the same people every day, connecting with the same people every day. For us, that concept is unfathomable. Seeing the same people every day. What am I, a loser? What am I, so antisocial? What is my life? Just one long exercise of boredom and monotony, bis Mashiach? I'm an extrovert. I got to be out there. And yet we all did this. And some of you did it so successfully. And you discovered some amazing things about yourself. I've got to share with you this experience. I had a student who grew up in a home that was Jewishly traditional, but let's put it this way, it was not so deeply committed to Judaism. And he transformed his life. He became a serious student in yeshiva, and he is now a respectable leader and rabbi and mentor to many. And I once turned to him and I asked him, what made you change your life? And he shared with me an experience he had as a young child which planted a seed in his mind that blossomed years later in his life. And he said for his 4th birthday, his parents bought him a goldfish. And they had this goldfish in the tank. And he says, I loved goldfish, and I would watch this goldfish in our tank for hours and hours. And I noticed a pattern. It could remain in the same place all day. And then at some point, after 10 or 20 hours, it would swim to the other side and remain there for a whole day. And I felt bad for this fish that its life was so monotonous and so boring. And one day I decided to give this fish the company that it probably yearned for. You know what I did? I opened the fish tank, I put it in my hand, I took out the goldfish, and guess what? It started to jump from excitement. I have a friend, I'm not lonely. And I was so excited from my beloved fish, I put down the fish on the ground, on the dining room, on the floor, and I went running to the kitchen to tell my mother how excited the fish is that it finally has a friend. And I went to the kitchen and I say, Mommy, this fish was so bored, and I took the fish out of the fish tank and it started to jump around and flap, and look how excited it is. It wanted company. And my mother looks at me, a 4-year-old innocent boy, and says, Oy vey, what did you do, Emmanuel? And she runs into the dining room as the fish took its last gasp and it died. So then at that moment, I understood that you could sometimes look at 2 different people. One person is submerged in a fish tank of water and doesn't move. There doesn't seem to be a lot of excitement. You look at another person, every night he's doing something else. Every day he's somewhere else. Wow, his life is so exciting. At the surface, it seems like the first one is lifeless, the second one is full of vitality. The opposite is true. The first person is truly alive. The second person is not busy living, he's busy dying. He's busy distracting himself, jumping from one ecstatic moment to another ecstatic moment, from one fun experience to another distraction, from one website to another website, from one habit to another addiction, because he does not know or she does not know who they are. When you're a fish in water, you could remain in the same place because you're connected to your core, you're connected to your essence. That is our gift today. That is our opportunity today. Answer that question. Where is the place where you really belong? What are you truly connected to? We have rediscovered a new joy in our marriages, a new joy in our relationships, a new joy with our children. And this does not mean there's no problems and no issues, but even if there are problems and issues, focusing and tuning into what is going on is an extraordinary moment of sobriety. There's something else which is part of clicking your life to press restart, and that is, such moments allow us the gift of vulnerability. Get to the place of your vulnerability, because remember, what shames you most will heal you most. Let's face it, when we run around the world and we run to work and we run back and here, often the distractions don't allow us to sit with ourselves. But we all know that beneath the layers, we each have those parts within us that are broken, those parts within us that are difficult to explore. use this time to go to those places. Because that's where you will find yourself. That's where you will discover your light. Beneath your shame lay your light. Beneath your masks lay your greatness. And beneath your naked vulnerability lay your deepest values and desires. Don't be afraid of those places, my friend. Yes, they are difficult places to visit. They may trigger profound tears and profound pain. But from those tears and pain, you will be able to experience rebirth. With obviously no knowledge of the coronavirus, in the late 1800s, the great German rabbi, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, Frankfurt am Main, wrote this chilling paragraph. I read, "If I had the power, I would provisionally close all synagogues for 100 years. Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch writing this in the late 1800s. Do not tremble at the thought of it, Jewish heart. What would happen? Jews and Jewesses without synagogues desiring to remain Jews would be forced to concentrate on a Jewish life and a Jewish home. The Jewish officials connected with the synagogue would have to look to the only opportunity now open to them to teach young and old how to live a Jewish life and how to build a Jewish home." Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch quoted in the introduction by translated to his classic book, Chorev, the classification of the mitzvahs. These are the words of Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. What is he telling us? What he's telling us is we love our shuls, we love our schools, we love our community centers, and may they all reopen soon. But we can often get stuck in the habit of worshiping institutions, and we become robotic and we lose the inner freshness and vitality. The center of Jewish life must always remain in the home. The synagogue is an extension of the home. It's in the home, it's in the powerful familial and personal and intimate relationships where Judaism thrives. There's also clicking restart on your life when it comes to yourself. This is the time to be able to really tune into my deepest priorities, my deepest fears, my deepest values, and my deepest choices, so I can click restart. I'm going to conclude with this story and then open up for questions. It's a story that's told about Chaim Weizmann. Chaim Weizmann was the first president of Israel, and in the early 1940s, he was imploring a British politician to allow Jews to return to what was then called Palestine under the British mandate. And this British gentleman said to Dr. Weizmann, he says, Dr. Weizmann, why do you have to start a Jewish country in that God-forsaken corner of the Middle East, surrounded by enemies and people who don't want you there? Why don't you take your Jews who do need some refuge from persecution, take them to Argentina, take them to Uganda, Africa, take them to the Canary Islands, or somewhere else? Why do you need Palestine, Dr. Weizmann? Chaim Weizmann said something to this person. He said, you may be right, but before I answer you, I want to ask you a question. I understand that every single year on Mother's Day and on many other occasions during the year, you drive all the way across the city of London in order to visit your mother at the nursing home where she lives. I have a question. How long does that trip take you? Early 1940s. And this British gentleman says, "Ooh, it's very stressful. It can take hours until I get there, and then spending time there and getting back. It's sometimes a whole day ordeal." Dr. Weizmann says, "I have a great idea for you. Why do you have to go all the way to that nursing home to visit this lady? There are a lot of other ladies in London. And if you want elderly women, there are plenty of elderly women living right near you. Why don't you visit some other woman who lives closer to you instead of visiting this old lady in the nursing home?" The man looks at him and says, "She's my mother. She's not just an elderly lady. She is my mother." And Dr. Chaim Weizmann smiles and he says, "Jerusalem Israel is not just a holy land. It's not just a nice land. It's not just a cute land. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yamini. We'll never forget our land. We'll never forget Jerusalem. For 2,000 years, we prayed towards this city. We mention it dozens of times a day. This is our mother. We love and cherish every elderly woman in London and in the world. But this is my mother. We can't forget our mother. Yes, you travel through London to go visit your mother. My dearest friends, this is a time when all of us were given the gift to remember not what we do to stay busy in life, but what is life? What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life? What are the most important qualities in life? A relationship with yourself, with your soul, a relationship with God, a very deep relationship with your spouse, with siblings, with children, of course, parents, family, community. The ability to be able to see yourself in a much healthier, honest, authentic way. To be able to shed away external layers and to be able to really click, restart on your life. I bless you. I bless me. I bless all of us. We shouldn't just get back to normal. We should have the courage and the resolve to be able to emerge into a new dawn. And it always begins with me and you individually. To be able to really never to go back to normal. To be able to really experience every moment of life with a new vigor, a new joy, a new enthusiasm, a new excitement. To be able to relate to ourselves and others with far more authenticity and passion. Don't wait. Don't delay. These are great moments happening. These are great opportunities simmering beneath the surface. Embrace it, cherish it, find it, and let it change you as the whole world is going through a transformation. Thank you very much. Let's open for questions.
Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson. Fascinating insights, and we'll have an opportunity to wrap it up at the end. A couple of the questions that are coming through. How does a person gain the courage and the strength to overcome their fear and anxiety about changing the way that they currently live?
It's a great question. Ooh, okay. It's a great question. Sorry for the echo. And I just want to say I'm going to try to be very brief with the answers so that we can get in as many questions as we can. And I think the most important answer to this is, I think there's two things. Number one, it's remembering that all fear originates in a very narrow way of seeing ourselves vis-a-vis the world. If you have the courage to examine the fear, or the anxiety, or the other emotions you're experiencing, you'll see that they're all coming from some type of story that you're telling yourself. And that story is often based in some trauma, in some ridiculous and absurd belief system, in some horrible experience you had, in some dysfunctionality that you saw or experienced. And the worst thing you can do to yourself, or I can do to myself, is allow those limiting stories to limit our lives for eternity. So the first thing is, don't become a victim to those fears. You are larger than the fear. Have the courage to be able to look at that fear. Don't judge it. Caress it like you caress a little baby and say, I know you're so scared of change. I know you're so scared of doing things differently. But you know what? This fear is really rooted in such a small and ridiculous and petty and often false story that I have been living with. And I just want to shed it. I want to emancipate myself I just want to live a larger life. I once read about elephants. You ever saw this? It's amazing that when elephants are small, when they're babies, they're never tiny, but when they're smaller and trainers want to hold them confined, unfortunately, they sometimes tie them to a tree with a rope. And the baby elephant tries to get out and it can't. And now the elephant grows into a huge, massive elephant. And you know what? With one kick and one pull, she can tear the rope off the tree and go free. But she doesn't even try. You know why? She's not a prisoner to the rope. She's a prisoner to her belief system that she can't do it because that's how she was trained when she was young. This is the story of so many of our lives. That's number one. And the second thing I will tell you is pray. In the morning, when you wake up in the morning, talk to God honestly, vulnerably, and say, I need to be able to confront these fears. Help me tune in to a deeper part of myself, which is divine, so I'm not a victim.
There's a couple of questions around the same theme. Hi, Rabbi. I wanted to ask if this corona COVID-19 virus could be a forerunner to the coming of Mashiach.
Beautiful question. The answer to that question is everything that happens in the world is a forerunner to the coming of Mashiach. The trajectory of history is that history is leading towards redemption. That is fundamental to Judaism. We say every day, Ani ma'amin be'amunah shlema b'viyat HaMashiach achaka lo b'chol yom sheyaveh. Everything is a forerunner to Mashiach. Certainly, a pandemic like this, which really shut down the whole world and unified humanity. I don't know when was the last time that citizens of Iran, Baghdad, Alaska, Los Angeles, Johannesburg, Cape Town, Muncie, New York, Melbourne, Sydney, Moscow, and Jerusalem were all thinking about the same thing for the last 10 weeks. When was the last time that happened? That's the topic of conversation by breakfast, by lunch, by dinner. It unified humanity. It's certainly a tremendous forerunner to Mashiach. I have no question about it. As I said last time in my address to the South African community before Pesach, which you may want to watch because we spoke about this at length, nobody knows when Mashiach comes. Hashem decides that. But remember, waiting for Mashiach is not just a passive act. Waiting for Mashiach is also an active lifestyle. Because what it means is I start living a life which reflects the state of the world when Mashiach comes. What will the world look like when Mashiach comes? And the answer is, our unity will emerge. The core of reality, the divine light and DNA in every single being will emerge. We will look at ourselves and everybody else as manifestations of infinity. I can already start living today as that person, manifesting that consciousness. So faith in Mashiach and Mashiach is not just a passive thing. Okay, let's sit on our couch and Mashiach will come and I won't have to pay my mortgage anymore. Great, wonderful. You won't have to pay your mortgage anymore. At least I hope so. But it's much deeper than that. It's not just waiting for a new world that God brings. It's also creating that consciousness that will be revealed when Mashiach comes in each of our personal lives. And I think in that sense, the corona created a tremendous arousal and preparation and a catalyst for this type of new consciousness.
There's a couple of questions along the same theme. Firstly, you say that it's important and it's an opportunity to go back to what really is important in our lives. How does keeping grandchildren away from the grandparents fit into this concept? How am I supposed to focus on resetting if I'm concerned about my parnasa and putting energy into finding an alternative parnasa? So in general, there's a theme of how does one look at the difficult elements when it comes to pressing reset?
Beautiful, beautiful question. And let's state clearly the truth of this. The fact that people have been away from grandparents and siblings and parents for a long time is difficult and it's painful. But I want to also emphasize something else, and that is suddenly we found in ourselves a longing I want to call my mother. I want to be with my sister. I want to be with my brother. I want to talk to my Bubby. I want to talk to my Zaidi. I want to talk to my sibling. I want to talk to a friend. I want to go back to my community. That teaches people. It teaches us what we care about. That's an amazing gift. So that when you will go back to your Bubby and Zaidi very soon, and you will be reunited with your parents and siblings, you won't take it for granted, and make sure you don't forget this, because we have allowed this consciousness to be forgotten. Now, I have to say, South Africa, and this is much better than what's happened in this part of the world. But in this part of the world, so many people, family, became mamish irrelevant for so many people. The main thing was the work, stress, anxiety, endless hours, workaholics, trying to make another buck and another buck and another buck, make money to make more money, popping pills, a lot of antidepressants, instead of really, now sometimes that's needed, but very often a lot of it comes from because I am not living a holistic life. I neglect my body, I neglect my mind, I neglect my soul, I neglect long-term meaningful relationships with family. So this longing that we have for those who are not with us physically is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity, a tremendous gift. In terms of economic hardship, listen, there are a lot of hardships. This is a crisis. This is not just a rosy coronavirus, that we can sit in our gardens and eat potato chips and wax eloquently about how beautiful this is. There is a lot of pain, there's uncertainty, there's anxiety. Of course, each and every one of us has to do whatever we have to do to be able to try to support ourselves and support our families and emerge from this as wholesome as possible, financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually. But I think what can be helpful is not to allow despair to overtake us. Every crisis is an opportunity for rebirth. Somebody once sent me a beautiful line. I'm going to read it to you. Sometimes we ask God to change our situation, but He put us in the situation to change us. So sometimes we look at reality and say, I wish I can change this. I wish I could change this. I wish this was different. This was different. How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with this? Good questions. And yes, we wish. But sometimes we have to ask ourselves, maybe the purpose of these situations is to change us. Now, this doesn't mean it's easy, but it means that there's an opportunity for me to go into a much deeper place into myself and ask myself, how do I see myself? How do I see my work? How do I see my work environment? Let's face it, a lot of our work patterns have become so dysfunctional and so unnecessary and so difficult and excruciatingly painful in terms of distractions of life. The purpose of work is not to worship the workplace. The purpose of work is to be able to help us fulfill our mission in the world by creating a planet that is filled with goodness, kindness, holiness, purity, unity, love, morality, and divinity. That's the purpose of work. I go to work. My work should not be defined by greed, by selfishness, by trying to compensate for my insecurities, by trying to show how I can flex my muscles and become a better shark than somebody else. Work must always be an extension of my spiritual inner core mission. We are summoned. Why did God make a system that we have to work and make money? So that we should be able to help each other through work. When you have that consciousness, everything changes. There's place for everybody. Everyone is a unique light of God in this world. Everybody has a unique contribution to make. Even competition is seen very differently, because when you're connected to your spiritual core, you're never afraid of somebody else's success. On the contrary, the more successful you are, the more successful I'm going to be.
There's a question or a number of questions around children. Firstly, somebody's asking, what about bringing children into a world that's in a crazy time? Do we want children born into such a crazy world? In addition to that, how do you explain the virus to children to allay their fears?
Great question. The answer is, of course you want to bring in children to this world. This is not a crazy world. This is God's world. The world has craziness in it. But let me tell you a little secret. The world has been a crazy place for 5,780 years. In fact, okay, just a little perspective. If somebody was born in 1900, and many of you, like me, knew people who were born in 1900 or around 1900, some of our grandparents of my generation were born around 1900 or a little later, yeah? They were born, my family comes from Russia. You know what they saw? They saw the First World War break out in 1914, which claimed more than 10 million lives. The Spanish flu, which claimed 50 million lives. The Bolshevik Revolution, if you came from that part of the world, which under Stalin claimed close to 50 million lives. The Second World War, which claimed dozens of millions of lives, besides the 6 million Jews, of course, the holy Jews who were murdered by Hitler, etc., etc. And that is when, by the time my grandfather was 50 years old, do you know the type of insanity and craziness he saw? Let's now give it perspective. We're living through a difficult time, but there is a tremendous resurgence of our shared humanity, of our responsibility towards each other. This is a unique historic opportunity for the Jewish people to be a light unto the nations. We now must seize the moment to do what we are charged to do, to be moral teachers of the world, to help all of humanity and civilization usher in a new consciousness, a consciousness focused on creating a world filled with goodness and kindness and mutual responsibility and caring for each other, even if we don't see eye to eye. For create a new consciousness between nations, between tribes, between people, between faiths, and even within our own community to be able to create a new consciousness. You're bringing children into a very promising time. And remember, this is God's world. And the entire existence is a miracle. So the same miracle that sustained our planet for 57, 80 years will continue to sustain it. The greatest miracle, even greater than splitting the sea, is the miracle of life on our planet. Research it from a scientific point of view, and whatever your belief may be, you can call yourself an atheist. It's still a grand miracle, whatever you want to attribute that miracle to. So don't worry about bringing in children to this world. This is a very, very special time. In terms of relaying the fears of the children, I think it's important. You know, I actually did a few children's programs, and I explained to the children what the virus is. You could see the children's programs about the coronavirus on the yeshiva.net. It may be interesting for some of your children, and I explain to them what a virus is, how it works, so they can understand it, and they can understand why we're quarantined, what we're doing. If you can give them some basic education, I think this will be helpful. The most important thing is to explain to your children what I'm telling you, and that is, we were given the tools to confront our challenges. God is always here with us, giving us the resilience and the strength to confront every situation, for the enhancement of all of humanity. And that's what we're trying to do with this quarantine, and explain to the children every moment you're quarantined is really a great mitzvah of contributing to the salvation and the saving of other people's souls. It's important to speak to your children and to listen to your children. I'm going to say again, because I think this can be very helpful. I did 9 programs with children in English, some in Yiddish, some in Hebrew, and you could see them on the yeshiva.net. And it may be very helpful for your children. We went through the programs, different situations, different ideas about the viruses from a scientific point of view and from a spiritual point of view, because when children see what's happening, it helps them come to terms with it in a much better way. And by the way, the more you are relaxed, the more you'll be able to help them be relaxed.
So in conclusion, Rabbi Jacobson, there's a number of questions or some statements around, when things go back to normal, so to speak. Perhaps people don't see the problem with spending time in theaters and doing the things that fill them culturally, etc., etc. So how does one know, so to speak, what elements of their lives need to be changed? What do I leave behind, and what do I take over?
Excellent question. Very good question. And I just want to enhance that question a little bit by adding another question, And that is, people have asked me recently, how can we make sure to be more family and home focused once we go back to normal work and we go back to our communal obligations? And I think this is a great question, and it requires a very individual answer. And that is, really ask yourself, or those things you were constantly doing that may be superfluous? They really were not contributing much to your life. Remember what life is about. Maybe that's where we have to begin. What is life? What is the stuff we call life? From a Jewish perspective, the answer is, I am an ambassador of God in this world, an ambassador of love, light, hope, and healing. Every moment, I have an opportunity to fulfill my mission as a representative of God in this world. That's who I am. I am an agent of God. I am his emissary. I am his ambassador, an agent of divine love, of divine compassion, of divine wisdom, of divine light, of divine clarity, and of divine infinity. That's who I am. That's what I bring to the world every single moment, my unique divine light. Ask yourself, what fits into that mission statement? Being there for your children fits into that mission statement. Being there for your spouse fits into that mission statement. Prayer fits into that mission statement. Study every day fits into that mission statement. Taking care of your body, of your soul, of your mind fits into that mission statement. Being a person who brings light and hope to others, filled with love, fits into that mission statement. That which does not, you can shed. Now, sometimes there are things on the border, and then you'll have to decide. Remember, there are those things that are your ultimate priorities, and there are those things that, are more luxury when you have the time and you have the ability, and it can certainly enhance your life. Go ahead. But you will now have the clarity to be able to say, you know what? I lived without this 2 months. I don't think this is really necessary in my life. Let's face it, some of us have been involved in toxic behaviors that are really unhealthy. They're destructive. Let them go. Some of us have been involved in relationships which did nothing for us. Let them go. Some of our youth are involved in the dating scene in South Africa and other places. So much of it is toxic. It drains your energy. It depletes you. You're just trying to please other people. Get rid of those stuff. Get rid of those stuff. Have the courage to be true to you. All of us are born originals. We shouldn't be as copies. In terms of cultural, educational, fun things that are not destructive or harmful in any way, this is really a very personal decision. Generally, if it's something that can enhance your marriage, that can enhance your deeper sense of self and your relationship with yourself and God, as they say in Russian, pazhalasta, enjoy. But it's so important to create now a schedule that remains firm so that even when quarantine is over, you don't immediately fall into the old patterns and forget everything. Whether it's about the time you spend with your spouse and children every day, whether it's the walk you're going to take with your spouse every day, whether it's the time you're going to spend studying or meditating or learning or exercising or doing other things, make that part of your schedule, just like you have schedules of appointments with people. Schedule in, literally in your calendar, schedule in the time with your children. Don't just say, oh, Shabbos, I'm going to spend time with my kids. Don't do that. Make that part of your priority. Put it in. Put it into your calendar on a daily basis. That way, forget it.
Beautiful. So, Rabbi Jacobson, as always, it's been tremendously inspiring. And certainly, I know that Jacobson, my dear colleague, and Rabbi Zilberg, my dear colleague, who represent incredible organizations, the art, the base, and from my side, based on my dear professionals. It's really been an honor to bring so many Eden together in unity for Torah. And as we approach the holiday of Torah, the giving of the Torah, Kabbalah Torah, which will certainly be in a very different manner this year, I think it's wonderful to see how many people have participated in preparing for the giving of the Torah and learned. And may it truly be a Yom Tov that is uplifting for all of us, one that brings us Kabbalah Torah b'simcha b'pnimius, the receipt of the Torah with incredible joy and really internalizing it. And so to Rabbi Jacobson, thank you very, very much. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I know that a recording is going to be sent out to all those that registered. And please God, we will see each other again soon. Most likely virtually, but hopefully soon in person as well. Have a wonderful evening. Stay well and stay safe. Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson.
Thank you, thank you. I love you all, and my blessings to all of you for a good Yom Tov and for good news from you and your loved ones in the whole world. Thank you.